Hello viewers, my name is Bernard Agbonoshi. Others call me Bernardis. I am the founder and the director of the health organization Bernardis Preventive Health Education. I'm also the author of the public medical book titled The Role of Public Medical Knowledge in Disease Prevention and Treatment. I am a nurse clinician and I work in one of the teaching hospitals in the country. I am a passionate advocate of primary or preventive health care, and I do that through public health education. We have looked at the disease topic hypertension. I talk about all that we needed to know about the disease topic hypertension. Kindly visit my page at Bernardis Primary Healthcare Media on Facebook and watch my video presentations on the disease topic. Today, let's begin looking at a different disease topic, and that is sickle cell disease. What is your knowledge on this disease, sickle cell disease? I know many of us have friends who have this disease. I know some of us have relations, family members who have this sickle cell disease, the disease that many often call sickle. So what is your knowledge on this disease? How does it come about? Well, let's take a look at it from a medical point of view. I do not want to begin by talking about what sickle cell disease is all about, the signs and symptoms and all of that. I believe in understanding, helping people to understand the concept of something. So let's look at the explanation of sickle cell disease, how it comes about. It is a very technical topic when explaining what it is and how it comes about, but I'll try and explain in a manner that will help all of us to appreciate this disease and hence help us to take appropriate measures if we have to make decision or face this disease. One fact we have to get is that sickle cell disease is purely a genetic disease, or is purely a disease of heredity, which means there is no other way a person can get this disease except through heredity. There are many technical terms here, but I'll try and explain them in a way that all of us can understand going forward. When we say genetic or gene, what do we mean by that? Well, a gene is the basic functional and physical expression of an organism which is inherited. When I say organism, human beings inclusive. So the gene is what actually determines the traits of an organism or of all of us human beings. So the genes carry information that determines some unique features or characteristics of all of us. So the features or characteristics that we all have, individuals have, is as a result of genetic or our genes, which we inherit from our parents. Let's look at these two terms, genotype and phenotype. Genotype is the hereditary makeup of an individual. So a person's traits, that is, distinguished features or characteristics, is determined by a person's what? Genotype, from the word gene, which we inherit from parents. The phenotype is the observable features of an individual, which is determined by a person's genotype and or influenced by other environmental factors. So all the observable features, examples of the phenotype: a person's hair color, a person's height, a person's skin color. These are the phenotype, a person's phenotype. And this is expressed by a person's genotype. I would like to say phenotype is not inherited. A person's observable features are not inherited. Phenotype is actually the expression of a person's gene or genotype. So whatever you see, observable features about a person, observable characteristics or features, is as a result of the gene expression of that individual or organism. The point is, genotype is inherited, but phenotype is not inherited. This explains why a child may not look like the parents. A child may not look like the mother or the father. This explains why, because the look, the observable features, the nose, the height, the hair color, certain specific features of both parents may not show on the child, because those things, that is the phenotype, are not inherited, but the genotype is inherited. A person's gene is inherited. The genotype, which expresses itself to give the phenotype, does not always express itself in the next generation, or let me say in the next offspring. So when you give birth, or you give birth, the genotype which is inherited, which the child inherits, some of the genotype may express, or they may not express at all. I hope I'm making some sense over here. So if you give birth to a child and the child does not look like you, please don't be angry. This is the scientific basis for that the look or the phenotype does not get inherited, or it is not inherited. And the genotype, which is inherited, does not always express itself in the next generation or offspring. This also explains why identical twins, no matter how much they look alike, there is always something observable to use to differentiate between them. This is so because phenotype is not inherited. Genotype is inherited, but phenotype is not inherited. Identical twins look very much alike, but they do not have the same fingerprint. This explains what I was trying to say, that the genotype may not express itself the same way all the time. Identical twins basically have the same gene. They share the same gene, but they do not have the same phenotype. Or identical twins have the same genotype, but they do not have the same phenotype, because genes or genotype do not always express themselves in the same way, and genotype is inherited. They both inherited the same gene from their parents, but they do not have the same phenotype or observable features, because the observable features, which is expressed by the genotype, the gene, which is inheritable and also influenced by environmental factors, is not inherited. So they look alike, they may look alike, but they do not have the same observable features or fingerprint. Example, fingerprint. Based on this explanation, those who fight their spouse or partners because the child does not look like them should take note of this. Yes, your child bears your gene 100%, all the time, but your child may not look like you. This is the reason. So if you are in doubt of being the father of a child, if you really want to determine if you are the father of a child, that is why we have DNA tests. The DNA test can never lie because it is fixed, it is always there. Your child will always bear your gene. If indeed you are the father of that child or you are the mother of that child, the child will always bear your gene, but your child may not always look like you. Your child will always have your genotype, which is your gene, but your child may not always have your phenotype, which is your observable features. So if you are in doubt of being the father or the mother of your child, go and do DNA tests, and that will give the final proof, but not to fight your partner because your child does not look like you, because it is not always so. Well, all this explanation is meant to build our understanding so that we can better appreciate how sickle cell disease, a hereditary disease, occurs. This is what happens. There is a gene called Hymoglobin Gene. This gene is with red blood cells. It's part of the red blood cells, and then it carries oxygen. So when the blood is moving to all parts of the body, it is this gene, hemoglobin, that carries oxygen for the cells to use. So this is how important this hemoglobin gene is. Hence, if there is a problem with it, then it is really a problem. Let's look at another technical term, mutation. Mutation is the change in the sequence of DNA. DNA carries genetic instructions or information. So when there is a change in the sequence of the DNA, there will be copying of genetic mistakes, or genetic information will be copied wrongly. And this can occur during cell division or when there is exposure to radiation, chemicals, or other gene altering factors. We have DNA chain. The DNA chain of a gene, for this matter hemoglobin gene, is then either deleted, there will be insertion, or substitution. Once that happens, there will be complete change of the nature of this gene. So let's continue. I would like to state that every individual has 2 copies of each gene. Every individual, I would say, has 2 parts of gene. The 2 copies or the 2 parts of the gene is inherited from the parents. One from the mother, the other from the father. So over here, the normal gene is denoted as A, and the defect or deformed gene is denoted as S. I want you to get this right. So an individual will have normal gene, genotype AA. One part of the A is from the mother, the other part is from the father. So the person will have genotype AA, that is normal gene. A sickle cell patient will then have genotype SS. One part of the gene, that is the S, is from the father. Another part of the gene, that is S, is from the mother. So the sickle cell patient will now have a deformed or a defect gene, which is what genotype SS instead of AA. I would like to state that all the problems that sickle cell patients face is as a result of the fact that the patient inherited a defect gene, hemoglobin gene, which is supposed to be A, but it is S, hemoglobin gene, genotype S from the mother, and then the second copy, hemoglobin genotype S from the father to have genotype SS instead of AA. And that is the main cause of all the problems that sickle cell patients face. In my first presentation, we look at the fact that red blood cell, hemoglobin is part of red blood cell. It carries oxygen to all parts of the body for the body cells to use. So the hemoglobin is a very important element of the red blood cell. So if there is a problem with it, then it is really a big problem. So we also look at the fact that the normal shape of red blood cell is concave. It is having such round shape. And such round shape or concave shape is easy to pass through the blood vessel or the veins and arteries. The concave shape of the red blood cell is designed like that to easily pass through the blood vessels, the arteries, and then the veins without problem. The arteries and then the veins do not change. They are always the same. But when a person is having the red blood cell shape changed from the concave shape to that S shape, and remember the person is having a defect gene, which is hemoglobin gene, it then expresses itself phenotypically or observably as S shape to give the red blood cell such S shape. So the S shape of the red blood cell will not be able to easily pass through the blood vessel because that is not its normal shape. Now let's look at two major problems that sickle cell patients face, that are sickle cell crisis and sickle cell anemia. What is sickle cell crisis? Sickle cell crisis is simply the excruciating episode of pain that sickle cell patients go through frequently at a point in time. What brings about this pain? We will come back to look at that. Sickle cell anemia is sickle cell patients having low HB. Their HB level is always low, way low below the normal. What brings about the anemia in sickle cell patients? We will also be looking at that. What causes the crisis or the excruciating pain that they go through? The sickle cell crisis occurs when the red blood cell assume that S shape. They are no longer having that concave or round shape, but assume that deformed S shape or having a shape like the farm tool sickle. When they have that kind of deformed shape, the blood or the red blood cell will not be able to smoothly flow through the blood vessel, which has not changed its shape or size. So when that happens, it becomes difficult for blood to easily flow to all parts of the body. And then it also makes the blood to accumulate or aggregate at some portion of the body, impeding the smooth flow of blood. And remember, we made mention that the hemoglobin carries oxygen, and the cells of the body need this oxygen to reach them in order to function properly. So if the cells are not having access to the required amount of oxygen as a result of the S shape of the red blood cell, and so it can no longer flow smoothly through the blood vessel to reach all parts of the body, that is what actually creates the crisis, or that is what brings about the excruciating pain that they go through. And sometimes the pain is normally experienced in certain parts of the body. Sometimes the pain is localized in the arms, in the legs. Sometimes the pain is severe around the chest. So this is actually what brings about the excruciating pain, or the episode of pain that they go through. We can also say under certain conditions, the red blood cells do not really have the deformed S shape they do not really have the shape like the farm to sickle. So the blood flow is normally smooth. But under certain conditions, the red blood cell assume fully the deformed S shape or the farm to sickle shape. Hence, moving through the blood vessel, flowing through the blood vessel now becomes very difficult. And once that happens, it brings about the pain. The blood now becomes what? Accumulated at certain parts of the body. It now becomes what? Viscous. The blood now becomes thick. It can no longer flow because its shape, it will not allow it to smoothly flow through the blood vessel to reach the parts of the body, all the parts of the body that is supposed to reach. And that is the cause of the sickle cell crisis, or the pain, the excruciating episode of pain that they go through. When we look at the sickle cell anemia, this occurs because the deformed S shape of the red blood cells do not really last long. The blood cells have lifespan. They have a certain lifespan, which is 120 days. But when they have this S shape, this deformed shape blood cell, do not really last long to their required number of days before they break down. So what happens is that the red blood cell break down earlier or easily than normal. And once the red blood cells break down more than is being produced, there's going to be deficiency of it in the system, and that is what brings about the anemia. Anemia is simply having low HB level.